All right, folks. Welcome back to the new Sentinel Daily. I'm Major Ethan Graves, some call me Sentinel, diving deep into the legal and political earthquake zones of 2025. Let's kick things off in Asia, because the headlines coming out of China and India this year, well, they read more like a chessboard with every square a potential trap. Speaking of chess, reminds me of this match I had in Delhi a few years back. I'll get to that in a sec. Now, China under Xi Jinping, it's tough to find the right word that doesn't sugarcoat the situation. Repression is up, way up. We're seeing massive crackdowns not just on, the usual, journalists and civil society types, but whole populations. Uyghurs, Tibetans, even outspoken business folks, pretty much anyone dissenting. It's chilling. Hundreds of thousands of Uyghurs are still imprisoned, and international watchdogs are calling these crimes against humanity. And then the violence. There's this whole disturbing trend of so-called revenge on society attacks, a brutal phrase. I mean, the Zhuhai SUV attack in November last year killed 35 people, and it's just one example of deepening social fractures. These aren't isolated incidents, they're signposts, big red flags, of real unrest brewing beneath the surface. And while all this is happening, China's flexing on the global stage, poking at flashpoints with the US, trying to rewrite the rules of the game. You might say it's a masterclass in pressure tactics, except the stakes involve millions of lives and the direction of world order. Flip the board to India and, well, complicated doesn't begin to cover it. This year, the Association for Democratic Reforms, ADR, put out a report that nearly half of India's state lawmakers have criminal charges against them. Serious stuff, too. We're talking murder, kidnapping, crimes against women. And 47% of the cabinet ministers, also under a legal cloud. It's insane. It brings up questions about how democracy works when lawmakers, might not exactly be law-abiders. And the courts, look, they're drowning. Over 52 million pending cases. Just let that sink in for a second. You could serve a life sentence waiting for your traffic ticket to come up. There's backlog, and then there's whatever you call this, which is something closer to legal gridlock. All this reminds me, back to that chess match in Delhi. My opponent, an off-duty police officer, laughed and said trying to navigate India's politics is like defending your king against 6 simultaneous checkmates. No matter what you defend, there's another threat lining up. That story stuck with me because it sums up how complex and relentless the legal political chess game can be, especially with so much at stake. All right, I could go on all day about Asia, but the world's a big place, and the next set of moves is coming out of Africa and South America, where some of the toughest tests of law and order are playing out for all to see. Let's set course for Africa, Nigeria to be specific. The former Kogi state governor, Yahaya Bello, his corruption trial is shaping up to be a real test for anti-corruption enforcement in Africa's largest democracy. Nigerians, to their credit, have seen this rodeo before, but a conviction could shake the whole political establishment. And it's not just big fish like Bello. There's this other case, a spiritual cleansing scam, bilking folks out of millions of naira. It's like, no one is off limits for the fraudsters, even those looking for hope. 2025 is expected to bring a whole suite of important rulings in Nigeria, from tax law to defamation, and even government liability for negligence. Each case is kind of its own referendum on whether the judiciary can keep the political class honest, though history, well, it's made folks skeptical to say the least. Over in Brazil, if you thought things might be quieter, think again. The ongoing fallout from the attempted coup and the Supreme Court's prosecutions, man, it's just non-stop. Leaders tied to Jair Bolsonaro are up against serious charges: coup plotting, assassination plans, obstruction of a presidential inauguration. Talk about escalation. And just recently, the Supreme Court didn't blink. A panel majority convicted Bolsonaro for his role in the coup attempt. That decision sent a shock through the country, cranking up divisions that were already white-hot. On the streets, the challenges are just as stark. Police violence is up, especially in Sao Paulo. Human rights organizations are sounding the alarm, saying abuses are piling on top of climate disasters and instability. And here's the kicker. Even with all that, Brazil's still officially labeled free by global standards. Civil liberties hang by a thread when democracy's under this much strain. Looking at Nigeria and Brazil side by side, it's clear that the work of cleaning out corruption and just keeping the gears of justice moving doesn't end with a single conviction or protest. It's a grind, inch by inch. And sometimes you wonder, how far can these institutions bend before breaking completely? We're going to keep peeling back layers, now heading into some loaded territory in the West and over in Oceania, where transparency, power, and civil rights are being tested in ways that hit close to home for a lot of listeners. All right, let's bring the searchlight back to the U.S., and honestly, messy is being polite. The Comey case is front and center. Federal prosecutors have been ordered to turn over grand jury material to the defense, and the judge called out some disturbing patterns at the Department of Justice, potential case dismissal hanging in the air. Now, DOJ says no, there's no misconduct here, and they're fighting to keep those grand jury materials sealed. Watching this unfold, you get this nagging question. How much sunlight does the process really need before folks trust it again? Then, of course, Congress bulldozed through a bill, finally, forcing the release of Epstein investigation records to the public. That's a move a lot of people have been demanding for years. My gut? We'll see even more names and layers peeled back, and it'll probably raise as many questions as answers. The Supreme Court's criminal docket this year is packed too. Sentencing, constitutional brawls, you name it. If you've got a legal bone in your body, it's the docket you can't ignore. Let's pivot to Russia, where repression is more rule than exception. After Navalny's death last year, still as murky as ever, the authorities aren't tapping the brakes. 30 convicted of political crimes in June alone. We're talking nearly 270 years of prison time doled out in a single month. Add in asset seizures, purges of business elites, crackdowns on protest and dissent. Freedom House calls Russia not free. And honestly, it's not hard to see why. And flipping over to Australia, bit of a different flavor but plenty to chew on. We're seeing active fraud cases, including that NDIS scam hitting 19 clients, plus big-ticket financial crime. National research is mapping trends in youth justice and cybercrime, and there are some worrying spotlights on conditions for detained kids and adult-only facilities. Rights groups say there's still plenty broken with offshore asylum detention, too. The High Court's latest report is basically a heat map of where legal rights are at risk, and where the law is, or isn't, stepping up. There's a theme running through everywhere I've talked about today. Balance. Can these countries, with all their historic weight and tough reputations, still find a way to balance security and justice, or does the pendulum just keep swinging back and forth? Whew, that's a lot of ground, and a lot of signals to watch heading further into 2025. Each of these places, Asia, Africa, the Americas, Russia, Australia, they're all wrestling with different pieces of the same puzzle. On the next episode, we'll zoom in even closer on a few of these flashpoints, and maybe unpack what history can tell us about where the next big move comes from. Until then, stay sharp and stay curious.